Today it's three of us. This is kind of going to be our routine now on lives. We are going to have super awesome guests who are going to share systems that they are not only built, but also using daily in their work. And today we have Will from Catalyst Content. He's doing amazing stuff with content for his clients. And I've chit chat with him about like different AI systems, I think from November, December, something like that.
In a while.
Yeah. And we decided to, same like with Barbara, to actually show the world like what are we chatting about behind the curtain.
Thank you so much for having me. I love doing these live builds. I think it's so fun to just like explore what's possible. And I think the fun of doing it live is like things inevitably break or don't go as planned. And it's like the thought process of how you keep iterating to make it work.
The main consistency of this live show is technical difficulties. That is our thing.
There you go.
So far we didn't have technical difficulties for this episode. So let's break something.
Thank you guys for the setup. I run a content agency called Catalyst. We've been AI native since the beginning, and only because we started about 2 years ago. So it's always been top of mind of like, how can we use AI systems to help build something a little bit more scalable? Agencies and traditionally content agencies were not a very scalable, business to be in. Content has always been like forefront of everything I think about, for better or worse. And so when AI came out, I was like, wow, this is really cool. After spending hours and days on set, being able to see like, oh, wow, production time of any kind of piece of content potentially can be reduced. And obviously the written word is the easiest one to tackle for AI. Let's dive into it. So I think the promise of today is like a self-learning content system. And I will deliver on that promise, but I want to set some context first with my beautiful Excel draw, which I didn't make, by the way. I asked AI to make it. This one, the second part I made. But essentially, I think one of the challenges of content marketers, or just like marketers in general, when you were creating content, the production time took so long on like creating a long form article, getting that through whatever layers of approval, editing it, revisions, getting it graphic designs, whatever. The production time was insane. And so you were planning quarterly, monthly, if you were lucky, a content calendar, and you were kind of locked into it because you had to accommodate that production time. And so something that's always been in the back of my head from this, actually, that's not true. It probably hit me about, 8 months ago. So it's been in the back of my head for a while. I just haven't had the opportunity to build it. And we've started implementing it. But the content plan and the content strategy can be so much, the feedback loop can be so much quicker now with AI. And I think that is, to me, the biggest unlock, because we're no longer just doing like campaign content or like evergreen content. And so to dramatically explain how long this process used to take, you would do like, a couple weeks of quarterly planning, meet with your executives, figuring out what goals were, figuring out roadmap, what the budget was. You would have to make all the briefs for every piece of content going out, articles, newsletters, social posts. You'd have to get sign off on all of that. Production would take about 8 to 15 weeks alone. And then anyone who works at a bigger company knows the issues with the approval layer, and just the stakeholders and everyone's involvement. And so it could take about, oh yeah. You're doomed. You are doomed, which you still might run into that problem. You just get to that problem a lot quicker, unless you build a Claude agent that acts as a legal reviewer, which no, but like if you have a good legal team, put it on them. If you have a good legal team, they will provide you guidelines and rules and written documentation. And you could feed that into an agent and just be like, hey, check for these things. And it's probably a pretty, probably gets you 80% of the way, like most AI. So anyway, I've kind of been, when I think about content strategy, we do a lot of LinkedIn content, which obviously has a very quick feedback loop. But I was like, why doesn't this work for all content? And so the way I've kind of reimagined how a modern B2B SaaS, thinks about content strategy. And this is where I'd love your guys' input on because, I run this as an agency and, I kind of need the litmus test of if this would fly internally. But the idea is that we have a few different systems working together. The first one is just like a catch-all signals sources layer. You connect your note taker, you connect any workshops or webinars that you do, LinkedIn creators, or insert social creator there that you like. You have it searching for industry news. You have it searching YouTube channels, either your own or other people's in the space, and then past performing content, right? So it's always retroactively looking at what performed, and everything gets funneled into this just like massive list of sources. Then you have this like filtering layer that knows who your ICP is, who is writing this content, what your strategy is. You can kind of get it as granular, but it's like it understands your brand and who's writing this content. And that filters through the sources and be like, hey, could we adapt this to be part of our own? Does this fit our strategy? Would this resonate with our ICP? And so that runs on like a scheduled cadence. So it goes in and it pulls out of the barrel. This is a good idea. This is a good idea. And then it goes, well, what would the brief look like for it? It's kind of assuming if it's a blog post, if it's long form, it probably stays long form and then, potentially shortened. This is kind of where the repurposing for different formats takes place. And it evaluates like, all right, is this a good LinkedIn post? Is this a good article? Should we do a campaign around this? And it's kind of being a strategic layer. You obviously could have a human in the loop step to this process, but it kind of makes those decisions and then just throws them into I said a Notion board here, where it's filtered content ideas that are actually relevant to you and your business. That's like layer one. And I think this is just a great way to keep content fresh. You're always kind of monitoring what the state of the world is. If there's outliers of your own content, it gets fed into this as well. So you make sure you do another post about it. And it kind of handles all of the, what the hell do we talk about, layer of this. Obviously, if we use our little human brains and put in our ideas there as well, it will filter in. And you can have some like priority system, right? It's like if I suggest the idea, we definitely want to go through, but if it just finds some random tweet, it's probably lower priority. Any questions there?
For me, no questions, but a comment. At least for me in-house, the situation is that it's quite challenging to create a system out of all those actions. Even with the AI, with the Claude, with all MCPs, connectors, etc., I still feel that those actions are operated in silos. I would love to hear from other people in the chat, especially those who are running like in-house marketing activities. Is that the same for them? Because right now I feel like I'm doing a lot of copy pasting. For example, like I've connected Fathom, where our sales and success and support is having all the calls recorded. I've connected Ahrefs. I've connected our website. And it's great for researching. It's great for mapping topics, pain points, etc., etc. But I still need to get all those informations to other projects to actually put it in the work.
From what I'm hearing, it probably sounds like it might be like a architectural problem of like how you're storing, assuming you're like building with Claude Cowork or Claude Code and you're using like local files or even like GitHub. But what I would recommend is actually having a dedicated processing step in between it going into this like sources database. If every time the sales calls ends, there's a step that extracts like voice of customer, objections, objection handling, proof, whatever, that goes into the database, then you're not processing when you're pulling it from this step to this step. It's already pre-processed. And that helped a lot with keeping the high quality output that you found from having every project separate, if that makes sense. Honestly, this system, I think, solves your problem. So the idea is then this goes into like a database, whatever Notion, whatever your team uses. This is like the collaboration layer. And there's an idea bank. And then either a human content strategist can come in and be like, oh yeah, like this is great, whatever, move this forward. They approve. And then based off of whatever, format or asset type that was defined, that's what it moves forward as. So it's actually cool because there's a human in the loop step where I can say, oh, I like this idea, but the AI suggested it be an article, and I actually want this to be a newsletter. And then once I move that forward, it then produces it as a newsletter because I just made that change. So you can do this content strategist step as a AI, but this is probably where I'd recommend a human the most. And then it goes, and based off of like your posting calendar or like what your cadence is, that's a predefined doc. It then routes it to where it needs to be scheduled to be posted. Anyway, this is like the full, and then of course, like the data from what's posted goes back to step one, and there's your loop. This is probably the more advanced level. So I want to show you guys kind of a baseline version of what that would look like. Oh, I thought we had our first technical problem. No. It definitely works best in Claude Cowork or Code. I almost have completely stopped using chat, and I would agree that's probably one of the biggest differences with being more of like a solopreneur versus working with a big team, because as soon as you get into Cowork and chat or code, information sharing becomes much more challenging. You have to be very diligent about how you use GitHub, which if you're not technical is like
No, I
annoying.
have issues with GitHub. I'm the one who's always says like, if I need to use GitHub, like it's a no for me. But you're right, like for in-house teams, the sharing information is the biggest challenge. That's why for collaboration, I mostly use projects on chat because it's easier because we're a remote team and I don't want to be resharing HTML files like every, 30 minutes. I need something that's operable. And even for reports, for example, like I've built great like reporting dashboard, but I can't share that with my team. It lives on my computer.
Yeah.
And like there is a lot of like co-work stuff and code stuff that are great for solving certain like systematic issue and challenge, but I can't share with my team, and therefore it solves nothing for me.
Yeah. So two things. In Cowork, you can now import a project. So if you click this, you can pull from one of your chat projects, which is great. And it's like their first, right? Like if you're Claude, you're figuring out how to solve this because this is like clearly the biggest issue. But they are allowing you to import references from your chat projects. The other thing I was going to say is my best solve for this is that's why I'm integrating with Notion. And so Notion still becomes that collaborative front end, essentially, where, the way I can get into like my file structure, but it's like company information, high level overview, who we are, what we do. Then like each folder is kind of a different project. And so it has like context of the project, whatever. So if I'm working on a project, I can work in a silo essentially. But then at the end of the day, I push it to GitHub and Notion. And so like the whole team has access to everything. And I just write that into my skill. So when I'm done doing a certain task, I don't even think about it. It automatically happens. But collaboration is clearly the biggest bottleneck for Claude right now. Let's go into, I ran this earlier today because I was good at preparing, which I don't usually do.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, the only file that I started with this project that you would need to like recreate this for yourself, pretty much just like a who we are as a company. Is it shown here? Yeah, this brand SST. There you go. There's your technical issue. So essentially what it is file, it's a markdown file that has like high level about the brand and like the company that we're writing for. This can be, I kind of crammed it all into one page just for like ease of demonstration, but it can obviously be like multiple files. If you have like who your ICP is, if you're an agency, like I have what my services are, who we serve, we do like AI visibility and search. So it's like, what is it? What else do people refer to it as? What problems does it solve? How it works, right? Like just general information about who we are. And what I think is very important, especially if you're doing content, is who your ICP is. And I've broken this into like different personas of who they are. I like looking at like psychographic profiles. You can see we have like voice of customer stuff. And then I usually like to frame things around like the jobs to be done framework, which hopefully if you're a content person, you know what that is. And then some proof points. And then when I write content, I filter everything through like a spiky point of view. So like I make sure everything has like an actual perspective versus just being a flat observation or like a truism. I want to have something that's actually, unique. Anyway, whole lot of context on who I am and what we do. That is very important. If you work in Claude or chat or whatever, just like go into a new chat and be like, make me a really single source of truth, detailed brand brief, and it will probably do a good enough job. So that's the one file I used getting into this build. So that's really my only input. Otherwise, I just came into chat, opened a new folder in Cowork. You're working off of your local machine. So you can see, I don't want to start. Choose new folder. You can see I'm actually in my, folder working out of here. And this is a local desktop folder, which will then, like I was saying before, will later be uploaded to GitHub. And that's kind of how I share it. Big learning. Please do not store your files on a cloud drive. So that's iCloud or Google Drive. I spent the last 3 days debugging my entire setup because I made this mistake. And someone else told me, and I've given the advice, but I obviously didn't listen to my own advice.
MCP for Google Drive is not working its charm as good as local.
I haven't used the Google MCP. I'm just saying, like, on here, I used to think I was being smart by iCloud Drive and storing it there because I was like, oh, everything will be backed up. But the way that it works is it like pretty much just creates aliases and deletes that content and stores in the cloud until you need it again. And so it was like telling me files didn't exist that I knew existed. And like that becomes a frustration at surface level. But then when it's like my website build and like my live website files are missing and like half of them are there, the other, it just screwed up everything. So learn my lesson. Anyway, keep it on your local machine. Noted. Learn from my mistakes. I brought it in and I just used whisper flow to ramble in what I was trying to build. This is my microphone. I hold the function key.
How we're all hard on Whisperflow.
Yeah.
I was avoiding it for a long time, but once I tried it, I'm never going back to
No.
it
Yeah.
again.
It ruined the co-working space for me. I can't be here anymore.
Well, I think it's kind of a power move because I'll be in a public place just like talking to my computer. And it's like definitely people are turning heads, but you just got to lean into it a little bit.
It's like when influencers for social media started from
Fully.
for Instagram.
Yeah. So all I did was I pretty much what I do now with any Cowork. I wouldn't do it in chat yet. I would do it in Cowork. I start with what we're trying to accomplish. Like before, I was pretty meticulous about thinking through myself, like what the actual linear steps were. And now it's pretty good, especially if you're using Opus, to just say, hey, this is what I want to do. Like this is the outcome I'm looking for. So I said, we're building a self-improving content system where each week I want to create a skill that runs on a schedule. And it's going to look at my past performing content. It's going to look at other industry creators, what they're talking about. And then any relevant news. I told it to use 2 MCPs that I have attached. One is Exa, one is LinkedIn Searcher. Exa actually does LinkedIn Search now too. So
No, I'm laughing because last episode that we had like a guest on, he was also like saying the same thing as you. Like he was like, I do not tell Claude what to do. I just tell her like what I want to achieve,
Which is
and then
her.
she it's her, and then like she figures out, like we call it Claudia,
yeah.
and then
Well-
Claudia figures out like what needs to be done. And then like he also figured out like all 3 agents that he showed. Like for him, like Claudia decided that she will use Exa, and we were figuring out what Exa was. Okay, this is becoming a trend. So we are not sponsored by Exa
Yet.
still, but I think that we need to reach out now.
No. I canceled 2 subscriptions, genuinely, like this is full seriousness. Canceled 2 subscriptions this week of SaaS platforms because I rebuilt all of the functionality with Exa in like an hour.
And we were wondering, because we've never heard of Exa. Like, we are working with so many of these tools and we've never heard the name, but it seems like Exa is the #1 pick for Claude whenever you're like building a workflow. So I'm like, what did they figure out? Is it the GEO part that's like really pushing it to Claude? Or is it, I mean, honestly, I think it's genuinely just such a good product that has great functionality. So it's being used widely, but that's hilarious that we've never heard about it before.
I think we have a mission now to bring someone from Exa to the show and get that sponsorship. Before we jump back in, like we have a question. Is this system replicable for ad copy as well for performance marketing?
Absolutely. In another world, if I was still in like ecom, I would build this for ads in a heartbeat, right? Like all we're doing is we're joking about Exa and like LinkedIn Searcher, but essentially those are just sources that are feeding information into this. So the same framework applies, right? So I'm just saying each week, capture that information. That information is using Exa to search the web and LinkedIn, and you could do the same thing. I believe Meta added an MCP integration now, and I think Google does as well. But wherever you can get that, just tell it to go look there on, every Sunday or whatever. And then the next part is then tell it what to do. So it's like I gave context of what we're trying to build. I gave it the sources it should go look at. And then I said, I want you to compile content ideas that align with my spiky POVs. So like look through that brand document and figure out the things that I talk about. Also make sure that they're relevant for my ICP based off of the jobs to be done framework and psychographics. And then help me map this out. Like a good Claude, it asks some follow-up questions to make sure we're on the same page. And it essentially asks, what primary output do you want it to be? Like, what does done look like? Great question. I should have said what done should look like. That's my bad. And I essentially was like, let's push it all the way. I want 5 content briefs and then 5 fully written posts. I still like seeing briefs, obviously with a bigger team and layers of approval that is necessary for me as a solo, agency owner who's just like, I'll post whatever. Probably not the most necessary, but sometimes it helps in the debugging process, right? Is it a issue with my writing skill or is it an issue with how the brief was constructed? Also, the brief just helps you get to a better output either way. Next, it asks about where the spiky POVs are. Great question. I linked it to the document, so now it has context. And then industry signal and like other industry creators. It's like, who do you want to focus on? It knows that I work in the go-to-market space and we specialize in fintech clients. So it, directed towards there. And then, ask like other sources that might be interesting. You can see it suggested like podcast or newsletter themes. So, maybe in like a V2 of this, I would have it, go look at my newsletter and pull in my like Beehive or Substack metrics. Because Claude always wants to show off its design capabilities, it made this graphic explaining the layout, but sure, it's help for visualization. This isn't very helpful. I kind of just ignored it. But essentially, it was like 2 things you need to decide are the creator watch list, which is, again, like, thank you for asking. I should have told you the accounts I want to look at. And then I told it to like kind of self-iterate and improve its writing, which it got a little confused on. It was like, there's no like simple pass-fail API that, it was trying to go too much. And I was like, no, I just want it to be written in my tone of voice, which is also in that main document I got.
Yeah. Sometimes not chat, but Claude in general, like whatever you use, sometimes especially Claude, it starts overthinking and overworking. And lately, I don't know if you two had the same issue, but last few weeks, I need to say it more often, like, stop, what are you doing? Like, you performed this task like a zillion times by now, like since last year. And now you want to write some scripts with Python and I don't know what, like, just do this.
Yeah. Don't overcomplicate it. Yeah, it definitely, especially if it's like been processing for a while, I'll just stop it completely and be like, whoa, what are you doing there? Like rethink exactly what you're working on. And yeah, I think giving it feedback of like, definitely an easier way to accomplish this. And it usually, in good Claude fashion goes, oh yeah, you're right. Well, I'll just do it this way. It's like, thanks. Good job.
Thanks for not ruining my credit card with all the
Yeah,
tokens you wanted.
There's definitely a line of code somewhere or in its training model to be like, if you can spend more tokens, do it.
Okay, so just to sum up steps by now. So you opened a Cowork, you actually connected it to a local project, you rambled through Whisperflow, the goals, like what do you want to achieve, and then like you iterated through the questions that Cowork shared, like same like with chat and with code, because so far we didn't showcase anything with Cowork on the show, so it's just super important for me that people understand it's same way of working, like in chat, in code, in Cowork. They are just labeled differently because they are focused on different tasks when it comes to execution. But for you as a user, it's all the same. Like you open the chat and you start like iterating.
The way of working is very similar. The only difference, chat is everything stored in like the cloud, and co-working code, you can work on like local files. The benefits there is of working local files is you can start like coding or like move files around your computer, way more technical than most people need. You could build this same setup in chat with a skill. The reason I chose to build it in Cowork is because they have a scheduled tasks now. So this can actually run, you can see this is the output, actually run independently of me every Monday at 8 a.m. when I set it. So that is the only Cowork has scheduled tasks. Chat don't, but chat doesn't. But this is essentially just a skill. And so in chat, you could do the same thing and just manually trigger it.
I feel like the schedule is running my entire life right now. But okay, so you finished up basically the entire process of how this workflow is going to function and what the goal is. So what do you do after that? Do you transfer it to code? What is like the next step where you're actually implementing this and using this on like, I'm assuming, a weekly basis?
So I gave it some more feedback. It found more people, it's helpful. It's adding more. And I was like, what do you want to see? And I was like, drafts. And I was just pushing it to be fully automated just to kind of like extend what's possible here. If I were building it for real, like I said, I'd probably have it connect into Notion or Asana or whatever to put the drafts there that I would then manually review before they get published. So then it builds the skill. And so it summarizes everything. And this is genuinely end to end. It will pull from my brand kit, the creator watch list, the signal log is what, is aggregating all of those, pieces of content. First thing is it goes through the signals and it pulls my content. We use a publishing tool called Ordinal, and it, feeds all of our LinkedIn data and our clients as well. But it's just doing a pullback of 30 days, looking for industry news, doing a search, doing an idea scoring, creating a brief. It has a framework for a brief, post rating, and quality gate. I didn't actually give it any specific instructions there, but it just did a good job of like getting it baseline and then publishing to Ordinal. So Ordinal can also schedule your post. So if I hit run on this right now, it will load 5 posts for next week automatically for me.
When you get that, do you have any notification system? Do you run like any ping in Slacks, or you just do it raw in Notion? Like
I'm running this here. So this is just going to run through the process. It's finding the files and it'll do this. So again, the benefit of these scheduled tasks is like once this is on, I essentially never have to look at this again unless I want to like refine it or, fine tune it. This is like fully agentic because these posts will go live. So that's running. I do have a Slack notification set up where once it is, let me see what it actually looks like. It was smart enough. It was smarter than me. It was like, do you want to be notified when this happens? I was like, oh yeah, that's probably a good idea. Where it goes through, and I'll pull this up. Let's see if I can The notifications are annoying. I have figured out a way to solve that. But yeah, so like when it's done, it just gives me this. It's like, you have these 5 posts, they're now scheduled. I thought a little bit. They just saved them as drafts in Ordinal, so I need to manually approve them and nothing scheduled. And then it gives me, a link to review it. I would probably have, a marketing manager or someone, just review those before they go out the door. Or if you're, in the Wild West, you can just have it go post on its own.
I prefer to review anything before it just gets yeeted into the universe, but those types of Slack notifications make me feel productive. Like, we also have like our entire LinkedIn outreach, and whenever I see that notification of like 10 new leads have been added based on these parameters, I'm like, great, love to get that notification.
Great job. You're
Good
so
job.
productive.
Essentially, these live artifacts they just created, and they're constantly updating. And so what I did is I did like a Slack daily digest. If anyone has worked with me, I'm absolutely terrible at looking at Slack. And so it's because I spent all my time in Claude at this point. So in Claude, I built an artifact where it will pull in any message that needs my attention with like a reasoning layer. So it's like, does Will actually need to look at this? If there's like an angry client or, something's not going right, as well as my email. I always miss my email notifications too, and Notion notifications. So I get notified in Claude, and then I can just go to the live artifact and then see what I need to respond to. And you can actually engage with it right there. So you don't have to switch between different applications.
That's been the biggest unlock for me too, because I get stressed by email and Slack notifications. I would rather have like a boiled down version of it in like my own environment. Right. I'm currently trying to figure out if there's a way to, I saw an engineer in San Francisco, but he didn't tell me exactly how he did this, but basically on his walk over to work, he has Claude call him on his cell and tells him like the rundown of his email of what happened in the last 24 hours. And he speaks the responses to it that it then drafts. And then by the time he reaches his office, he just needs to like look at the email and push send. And I'm like, I need this. I don't know why, but I need this function.
Yeah. That's awesome. I really like that. Yeah, there's so many different things you can do. I think the biggest takeaway with all of this is like experiment. I know we got, a little technical. I guess it's like hard to know what everyone's kind of technicality level is, but like genuinely, I'm not technical. I kind of understand how things work at this point, but like this was my prompt. Like what you're seeing on the screen is all I did. And then I just responded to its questions, and starting with the output of what you want it to be. So now we're in Ordinal. This is my like social media scheduling tool. You can see here are the 5 posts that it created. I didn't do anything. I didn't touch it. And better than not posting, and I can spend more time with like giving it more instructions on my tone of voice and those types of things. But right, like I told it that I just wanted it, and it's kind of interesting to see the evaluation it goes through to like understand, right? Because it found 12 ideas and it narrowed it down to 5. So what I like to do is go into the the logs, if you will, and be like, all right, why did it pick these? Like maybe I didn't like what it picked. And so now I want to know, well, why did it make these decisions? And that's where I kind of debug. And I think the best rule of thumb with any AI system you're building is just like, let it run, like tell it what you want it to do, have it completely go through it end to end, and then go back and give it feedback. It's no different than what you would do for like an employee, right? Like you kind of give them what they need to do, and then you let them do it, and then you give them feedback, and they improve over time. And like that is the exact same thought process here with Claude. And I can show like this is the working file. So it like went through, these were the 10 ideas it created, and it's like ranking them, and it has a scoring system, and it's like shows you what ICP they're targeting, if it's fresh, if there's evidence, if it's relating to that ICP, if it genuinely has like a strong point of view or perspective, which obviously will do better on social, creates the briefs, then we were doing some debugging. This is where I learned my LinkedIn MCP was broken. So I switched all over to Exa, Go Exa. Then I asked it to create it with 2 hook variants, and then it picks the better one. And, it's not the best. I would definitely, come in here and edit. But for not doing essentially anything, right? Like once this is running, I don't have to do anything. I just need to go in and then edit the post. It's a whole lot better than what most people just sit down and start writing for a LinkedIn post. And it really does get better in time, right? Because it will see, okay, it looks back the last week, what worked, what didn't, and that will factor into how it creates the next batch of content. So you let this run for a few months and you're giving feedback, it's going to dial in significantly.
How far back does it look at your post to make sure that there's not like, if there's a topic that's been maybe a little bit too reused?
I think I said 2 weeks. I think with like the caveat of, right, you can talk about the same thing, but if it was a framework post, maybe explain it as a story, but there should still be like a buffer. And the way this system works is the more inputs you can feed it, the better, right? If it's just recycling the same information, if you aren't connecting it to, like if I am building this out for real, like I'm connecting it to YouTube channels that talk about similar topics. I'm connecting it to Twitter feeds. I'm connecting it to other newsletters. I would want it to prioritize the sales calls that I'm having or the real conversations I'm having, but you need to be then constantly feeding that top of funnel, which is, way more, again, it kind of does it automatically, but is also a lot more easy to do than, again, back to what we used to do of those like quarterly calendar plannings where you're just like locked into a strategy that might not work. Well, awesome, guys. Thank you, everyone. That is all for me. I do want to leave you with a parting gift. I put this whole system, and we have other ones, in a GitHub repo. Don't be scared. It's just a file folder. Don't think of it as anything other than a file folder. If you
are confused by it, just ask Claude what to do with it.
Yeah. If you go to, hold on, this isn't my public one. I also don't really know how to use it. But it really is just a file folder. Here, I'll link it in here. If you just go to the code button, you can download it as a zip, and it's just like files. Like you can just drag that into. You don't have to do anything crazy. But this is the whole system we went through, plus some other stuff. It like tells you how to like optimize your LinkedIn profile, write better hooks, write better content on social. So feel free to download this and play around. I know people like little free resources. And then, as always, hit me up on LinkedIn if you have questions.